Right, so let's start, and I'll invite Juliet to kick off.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have, of course, stood before you several times before to be questioned on my views, my abilities, and my experience. This is, in fact, my 6th hustings in St Mary. On the basis that you probably know quite a bit about my background already, I will use this time to comment on what I've achieved in the past 3.5 years, measured against what I said I hoped to deliver when I stood in the last election. I will, of course, also touch on any difficulties I've encountered before discussing some things I hope to work on with parishioners in the next year or two, should you decide to put your trust in me once again. Of course, much of what I have done is already documented and in the public domain. My activities in the parish are recorded in the minutes of assemblies, and the financial governance and oversight I have exercised is evidenced in the published accounts. I've kept a tight control on parish finances, while still providing the necessary funding for larger projects, such as part funding a children's play area or repairs to the church, and bringing any extraordinary items to a parish assembly for approval. I have augmented the information provided at rates assemblies, and if re-elected, will once again raise the issue of whether we should appoint external auditors at the next budget meeting. Talks to establish the cost implications of this have already begun. I am accountable to you all, not only through the ballot box, but also on an annual basis at the Parish Rates Assembly. I set out my budget estimates each year, and in presenting them for your scrutiny, I outline what I hope to be doing in the parish in the following year, seeking your backing for the necessary expenditure, as well as building prudent reserves. All this has been achieved with only one small increase in the rate since I was first elected constable. I have communicated all major decisions through the parish website and also through our quarterly communique. I further engage with parishioners in a variety of ways, personally, by phone and email, of course, but also through social media, my own and the parish Twitter account, and on Facebook. In this way, I am constantly reaching out to all sections of the community and gathering their views. I also host a monthly drop-in in the community, and I am delighted that our Deputy David Johnson accepted my invitation to join me on these occasions. We have a small number of regular attendees, and others who pop along to discuss specific matters. I have consulted with you on various matters over the last 3.5 years and have carried forward the results as I promised to do. All this is a matter of record. My main parish pledge at the last election was to deliver the village centre improvement project that had been developed as a result of extensive parish consultation. The power of that consultation was formidable. At the outset, I would have laid odds on a one-way system being adopted, but that was not what the numerous meetings and workshops pointed to. The scheme was, of course, delivered. My own personal favourite features are the footpaths, which I see being used every day, rain or shine. I see walkers, dog walkers, babies in prams, toddlers on their tricycles, mobility scooters, and even occasionally a care assistant taking her charge for some gentle exercise. However, the delivery was not without controversy. Inaccuracies about costs were fed to the media, and this was fuelled, unfortunately, by some who ought to have known better, having had the facts at their disposal. I remain firm in my support for the scheme and in my belief that it was about time that some infrastructure monies were spent on St Mary, in support of our 20-year-old village plan. However, as the parish and its good standing is at the heart of everything I do, I must admit that it upset me greatly to see the good name of the parish being challenged in that way. I said in my last election leaflet that changes are often incremental, and there has been some fine-tuning of the scheme. Please, please do not ask lightly for any more rumble strips. They are not nice to live alongside, and I would certainly not recommend them. There are also other areas in the parish where the speed limits may be inappropriate. Following the prescribed DFI procedure, I have fed recommendations to their team, who have confirmed that La Grande Rue and Grève de l'Ec Bay will be considered in their island-wide review. Of course, I don't work in isolation. St Mary is in a fortunate position with a strong municipality, and I am grateful to members for their support and diligence during this last term. I will make special mention of just 2 branches of the municipality, but my thanks go to all who serve the parish in this area. Across the island, recruitment is an issue for the honorary police, and we are faring well compared to many other parishes. I am grateful to all of our officers, but especially to our chef Mark Evans and his fellow centeneers for everything they do to ensure unobtrusive but effective policing by consent, thereby keeping St Mary the safe community that we all appreciate. The Roads Committee have faced some unusual challenges during this term. For example, as you are all no doubt aware, we have endured a sustained road closure due to a collapse, and the Roads Committee, as the Highway Authority, has spent many hours in trying to resolve this issue, which is not as straightforward as you might imagine. The workload on the committee was further concentrated as the former rector needed to recuse himself due to a conflict, and so I am indebted to the 3 other members for their conscientious and sustained efforts. Despite the difficulties of the situation, and as this has been a matter of legal negotiation, there is nothing further I can say about it at this time. I am pleased to say that a way forward has been agreed between the parties and that the relevant agreement was signed by the parish late last month. I hope to have sight of the fully signed document in a matter of days, and as soon as it is available, the retaining wall will be rebuilt and the parish will be in a position to reinstate the road shortly thereafter. Another of my aims was to improve community involvement and participation, and this has been a very rewarding and successful task. I pay tribute here to the enthusiastic band of parishioners who have worked hard to develop the social side of parish life over the past 3.5 years, and to everyone across the parish who has taken part in our varied programme of events. My experience, achievements and responsibilities in the States Assembly and on the various panels and committees in which I have served are also a matter of record. Since the last election, I have served as chairman of the Planning Committee. The committee's work touches the lives of many islanders and, of course, parishioners, although as a matter of committee protocol, I do not sit on any St Mary applications. Each year, we report to the States on the number of applications brought to the committee, results of any appeals against decisions, and any areas where we consider improvements can be made, either to process or policy. The 2017 report showed that less than 20% of decisions were appealed, with the majority of those being upheld. I think this demonstrates the robustness of my committee's process and decision-making. Amongst other things, the report also noted our frustration at the length of time taken to review the policy on replacement of historic windows, and I am pleased that the supplementary planning guidance on this often contentious matter was issued last month. As I said at the Hustings 3.5 years ago, talking about myself does not come naturally to me, although at election time it is, of course, a necessary evil. I've been running a very positive campaign, focusing on my measurable achievements so far and on what I believe I can offer the parish in future. These are not empty and vague generalisations, but are real initiatives, some building on my past achievements and others being developed in response to matters raised by you, the parishioners. For example, during the last Island Plan review, I took an amendment to the States to maintain our existing village plan when all the others lapsed. This was because it contained so much work that still had to be addressed at that time. We are fortunate that we are still a largely rural parish, although of course that has its challenges too, with infrastructure, for example. It is important that we strive to keep our identity and our stunning natural environment, but making this accessible to other islanders and visitors alike to enjoy. So, it is now time to revisit the parish's village plan. The time is right to consider whether, for example, we need more first-time buyer homes, where they could be sited, and even if there is anything that the parish could do to make them more affordable. The experience I have had on the planning committee will stand me in good stead to organise this review in time for our village plan to be adopted in the next Island Plan review. In my campaign, I have also outlined my hopes of introducing a community support team, my work to support our community preschool, and my plans to deliver at least one more footpath in the village area. At the time of the last election, the island was also considering the position of the constables in the States, and I was concerned then that the parishes needed strong voices to ensure that if the status quo were to change, their identity and their viability would not be diminished. Now, it is the island as a whole that is in need of stability and strength. We face challenges in many areas due to many things, but perhaps most imminently due to Brexit. If you know me personally, you will be aware that I was very unhappy at the result of that UK referendum. But to coin a phrase, we are where we are. The decision has been taken, and now Jersey must work incredibly hard to turn potential difficulties into opportunities. I've been involved in many of the Brexit workshops and am appreciative of the detailed work that the Chief Minister's Department and the Department for External Relations have done so far. But there is so much farther to travel. We learnt only scant days ago of the possibility of the UK seeking to impose a public register of beneficial ownership, and the decisive action taken at that time has helped to avert a potential crisis for the time being. As an island and as a government, we must remain vigilant. At a time when the Assembly has already lost a number of very experienced members, we know that we are facing some of the greatest threats to our economy, and yet we are also potentially having the chance to seize new opportunities. I believe that I am the candidate that has the necessary skills, experience and motivation to best serve St Mary and the island at this time. My past experience and proven evidence capabilities mean that I will be able to deliver on my proposals. If you really want them to be realised, then now the rest is down to you. I will need your support on election day. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and I look forward to your questions.
Right, John, make your address.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow parishioners, many of you will know me from the time when I was your parish deputy, a position that I sacrificed at the last election when I stood for constable, losing by a narrow margin. I've once again been encouraged to stand for this position, which I do on principle, as it gives you, the electorate, the choice of a change in leadership in the parish and in the States, in what is the only contested constable's election in the island. You will know that I've served the parish in many roles in an honorary capacity: constable's officer, centenier, roads inspector, and up to the present church warden and treasurer of our parish church. In 2011, I was elected deputy, which gave me a great insight into both parish and island affairs, during which time I served on the State's Employment Board and various scrutiny panels: population, migration, reform of social housing, environment and wastewater strategy. During the last few years, the public perception of politics has declined rapidly. Why has this happened? Basically, a lack of communication, until something controversial has been accepted and rubber-stamped by the states. Many decisions made, and the reasoning for these decisions is never made clear to the public, which results in uncertainty, lack of support and mistrust. This is supposed to be the time of transparency and honest government. But sadly, judging by the projects being presented over the last few years, that is not happening. The hospital, Lake School, even the lifeboat dispute, along with many others, people are feeling that they are being denied transparency. This has to change. The only way to do this is to have more communication with the public, both on state's business and at parish level. Without transparency, there can only be rumour and speculation, which, as you know, is far more damaging than the truth. If elected as your constable, I would ensure that you are informed of important issues. You will know that when I served as your deputy, I always kept you informed of what was going on behind the scenes by publishing my blue deputy flyer. We need the electorate, the public, to be informed of pending decisions which will affect all of our lives, both in the parish and island-wide. People need to be able to engage with their representatives, to express their views long before decisions are made. People need to help shape the system, not just be subjected to unrepresentative decisions. My priority would be to care for my parish and its people, and in so doing, represent your views in all of those decisions. Immigration is a constant worry to everyone. It cannot be denied that we need people to work in all of our industries in order to generate our economy. But better ways of allowing people access to work and establishing a strict vetting process, including criminal record checks, have to be a priority before letting people in. Petty bureaucratic interference into people's everyday life, which could easily be compared to a totalitarian state, is echoed through many states' departments, with planning and environment obviously winning first prize. Many of the regulations have been adopted from the UK, with dedicated departments set up within in order to implement what is mostly costly and unnecessary regulation for the basic maintenance of homeowners' properties. Of course, this is also a very underhanded way of raising stealth taxes on what should be the owner's right to repair and maintain their properties. Many of our environmental issues focus on traffic and traffic pollution. We are forever being encouraged to leave our cars at home, catch a bus or use a bicycle. That might be fine if you live a couple of miles from your place of work or on a bus route. But people in country parishes do not have that luxury. People still need the freedom to commute from country lanes. The problem arises at the other end of the journey, with nowhere to park. Our infrastructure department have known this for years, but refused to increase parking due to their environmental policy. In so doing, they are creating more pollution than is necessary, with people now taking longer to find a parking space. The infrastructure department actually fails in its job title, as a lot of people in the parish and island still do not benefit from the basics, main drains and fresh water. This is something that is paramount to a modern civilised society, but many parts of this parish and island often lack both of these facilities, even though they pay for that privilege in their taxes. There are, of course, serious environmental issues involved with pollution and possible serious health implications. This needs to be brought to the attention of government in order to be dealt with as one of our priorities, especially as the money that could do this is being wasted on advisors and many grandeur and superficial projects. The term affordable homes is a farce. It has been used so many times that people have now been brainwashed into believing the term. The cost of a basic home is far too expensive for most working couples to be able to afford, and land prices should not be blamed as the sole reason for this. Our states have a massive portfolio of property and potential sites which could reduce land prices for basic housing if the political will was strong enough. Housing design could also account for major savings. As an example, we are now using twice the amount of concrete and 90% more steel in construction of a typical basic house equivalent to 40 years ago. Again, environment issues also ensue. Due to production, we in Jersey are using our natural reserves up at an unsustainable rate. St Mary is a wonderful parish to live in. Jersey is a wonderful place to live, but we are slipping behind in everything that we do. We need to continually move forward or we face a massive adjustment in both culture and cost. The biggest cost in everyone's life is housing. Whether you are trying to buy your first home or renting the most basic accommodation, schemes to produce basic housing as it used to be, using estates loan or shared equity, have to be revised and supported. It is the only way to encourage young people to stay working here and giving them and us a secure future. People right across this island say that we need a change of politicians to actually represent them. This is your opportunity for that to happen. If you don't have a choice of candidate, then things don't change. If nothing changes, then we stand still, which means we actually get left behind. If you really want change, if you want to go forward with someone supporting your views, then please vote for change. Vote for me to represent you. Thank you.
Right, we'll now go to question time. Tony Gilbert has got a roving microphone and he will bring it to you when you want to ask a question. Right, who's going to be first? Anne at the back there. The microphone is next to you.
Thank you, Anne Harris, St Mary resident. I'd like to ask a question about part of parish administration, and that is to do with licensing of guns. Would the candidates explain their approach to the licensing of guns and what they will do for a new application or for a renewal?
Right, we're going to answer alternately, so John is going to kick off first answer.
I have a great experience of guns. I've been shooting since I've been 20 years old and held a licence from that time. The application form for guns is very, very stringent, and every club in the island, and I must emphasise that people have to belong to a club now in order to obtain a firearm certificate. Every club is very stringent in the way that guns are handled and the processes and training for that firearm. At the moment, the firearm form is quite intense. There's about 5 or 6 pages to it. It also requires you to have medical certificate if necessary. You have to keep the guns very, very secure, and every gun and all the ammunition are entered on your licence. Jersey has one of the probably safest shooting sports in the whole of the world. because it's basically our prime sport in the island. I think there's something in the region of about 450 people that shoot actively in sports shooting in Jersey. It's all target shooting. There's very little of anything else that goes on. During the time of...
Gives you 20 seconds.
During the time I believe it was about 1990, you used to have a port d'armes for a shotgun. That doesn't remain anymore. Everything is on firearms licence, on firearm certificate. So every gun in the island is accountable.
Okay.
Thank you. There is a very strict policy controlling the issue of firearm certificates. Firstly, when a form is received at the parish hall, we will scrutinise it to check that there are all the necessary components contained. You have to prove a valid reason to possess in order to be granted a firearms licence. Usually that involves being a member of a club. There are other things, there are pest controllers, etc., but they are obviously in the minority. I will always interview the candidate for a firearms licence. It's always on the first application. Variations, probably not so much of an interview. I will, if necessary, interview referees, and I will also always write to the medical practitioner to ensure that the form has been accurately filled in by the applicant. So there are background checks that I do even before we get to the stage of looking at things like how will the guns be stored, where will the ammunition be kept. Everybody who wants to have a gun at their private address has that address inspected by our chef de police. I receive a report on that, and I then, well, as I say, interview the applicant to decide if they really are have a bona fide reason for wanting this. There's always a criminal records check done on every applicant. Obviously, a parking ticket or whatever doesn't affect it. But if there is anything that gives me any undue concern, I will take it further, talking to the Home Affairs Department, talking to the police, the Firearms Registry. And at the end of the day, it's a very heavy responsibility that the constable bears in issuing a firearms permit, and it's something I can assure you is taken very, very seriously indeed.
Thank you. Glenn. I don't know everybody's name because of my age, you forget them.
Good evening. My name's Glenn Bauer. As this is essentially your job interview, could you tell me, or all of us, both, your strongest and weakest attributes?
In a job scenario, that's probably quite difficult. I think it's starting with one of my weakest attributes first, and you probably won't appreciate this from what I'm saying tonight. I'm incredibly shy and incredibly nervous about making the first contact with people. It's something that I faced all my life. I was in financial administration and legal administration before I came to work for the parish 18 years ago. And I had to really discipline myself to be structured in the questions that I would ask and to make sure that I was fully versed and fully briefed on the situation before I could go forward. And that's something that I've really... It was my weakest point, but it's something that I've almost turned into a strength because now I try to prepare for everything in advance. My strongest point is I like to encourage other people in the team that I'm working with, and we have got teams at Mary's in lots of different ways, to shine through. Because I really like to hear what the other people have to say before I come forward, because there are some people out there with some brilliant ideas and they need to be encouraged sometimes. And I found that particularly on the doorstep. I've had a couple of really good suggestions while I've been out canvassing, and people would never come forward to me and make that. But because I was approaching them on their doorstep, they've actually come forward, and I think that's really rewarding.
John?
I think probably my strongest attribute is I believe in people, and I believe in people making the plans for us to implement. I want to implement those plans. As far as weak points go, we all have weak points. I try not to identify with weak points. I like to stay positive and I like to move forward. Thank you.
Next. Is it working?
Thank you. My name is Martin Samphir. Could I please ask both candidates what they believe has been the most important achievement by the present constable as constable over the last 10 years?
That's you to start.
The important achievement by the present constable. I'd find that quite difficult to answer, actually. I would think the constables kept the parish together financially, but there have been costs and there have been disagreements, but I won't dwell on those.
Well, it's very interesting. There are sometimes, you work really hard to do something really quite big, and you feel you've done something reasonable. But actually, for me, the best achievement, the biggest achievements I've had, are two in this last 3.5 years. I've mentioned one, the field paths. I remember just after the field paths along here were finished, a mother who lives sort of in that direction phoned me up and said, "My 10-year-old's just gone to the shop to buy some lemonade." Never felt confident that child could go out in the village before. And that's a really small thing perhaps, but I thought that was really profound, and I really felt proud of that. And the other thing happened really quite recently when somebody who'd been in the parish for a few years but had not made any real connection in the parish came to one of our events and said to me that people spoke to her all day and she felt really part of a community. That's what I've been trying to do, and I'm really pleased with that. Thank you.
There's a gentleman in the doorway there. I'll come to you next, David. Behind you.
Hello. Quick question, or maybe it's not a quick question. As you're both aware...
Can you give your name?
Casper Wimbley, sorry, St Mary resident. As you're both probably aware, a vote, or my vote and the vote of most people in this room is worth more than the vote of most other people in the island or any other people in other parishes in the island. And there's been lots of recommendations made about reform in terms of electoral reform, democratic reform. I'm aware that both of you have already commented on the issue of the dual role and that you would like to see that maintained, or that's what I understood from what I've read. But I'd like to know a little bit more maybe about moving forward how you think the system should be made fair so that everybody's vote is worth the same or as near as possible. Because I can't really vote for anyone who insists on maintaining the current situation. Thank you.
Well, this is a tricky question because at the moment, much as I understand that the importance of electoral reform and parity of the vote in power, we've got such a major list of issues that are facing the island. In the last assemblies, we've dwelt on electoral reform without any real advance for so long. I really feel we need to concentrate on actually doing some of the work that needs to be done. Having said that, from my own point of view, I've been saddened by the fact that with the three members that we've got, the three classes of members, as I really thought would happen, the role of the constable, even though it's been settled in the States, in the referendum, it seems to me it's almost diminishing itself. This is the only constable election that is contested. I don't have so much of an issue when members who serve their parish in deputy or constable roles are returned after a period of service unopposed. But we've had so many new members going in without facing the electorate at all that I think we're going to drive ourselves into crisis. We have to address it. I'm looking at I would hope not to do anything about reform for the next 2 years. We've got a 4-year term coming up. But in 2 years' time, the decisions must be taken so that in the 4th year of that term, all the plans can be put in place. And really, it's going to have to be, I think, we've had an electoral commission. Whether we need a royal commission, I don't know. The States has proved itself unable to reform itself. The states didn't honour the referendum result. And I think, that seriously dented the public's confidence. We have another referendum coming up, and I wonder what the states will feel about implementing whatever decision comes from that.
We had a report many years ago called the Clothier Report, and that summed up basically the way that we should be going. Unfortunately, it was thrown out. We still do need reform, but I think that should be taken by an independent panel, and the state shouldn't have anything to do with it whatsoever, because all you end up is turkeys voting for Christmas.
Lieberman's, Tony. All this high-tech business.
Good evening. My name is David Munns. I have a question really relating to to John, and I quote from the manifesto that he put out, and it's the first and opening sentence. Having lived in the parish for 34 years, I'm certain that I can improve how the parish officials work together as a team, a more cohesive manner, and the best interest of both the parish and the parishioners. Having been a member of the parish administration for over 50 years in various offices, and I'm still serving, I'm not aware of these problems to which you refer. And so the first question is, could you please explain the problems that you have found within the system that makes it so difficult and dysfunctional in its operation in the need and that it needs fixing? And secondly, you have obviously identified these problems, and I am therefore intrigued to know what you would do to correct them and why you are the right person to achieve the transformation. Now, that primarily is to John, but I would also ask the constable to say whether there is anything that she has found wrong with the parish system that we employ now. Thank you.
That's you, John.
Firstly, Mr. Munns, I did believe that the questions to the candidates were going to be exactly the same. Yours clearly isn't. It's specifically to me. I've been in the parish administration. I've had disagreements going on with it. Unless I answer it very personally, you can't get all that information. I don't actually think that's a fair question, because you can't put the same question to the constable.
Do you want to comment?
Well, I can't comment on John's manifesto. He stated what he stated, and it's up to him to expand on that. And if he doesn't want to, there's nothing we can do. With the question that came to me, what have I seen that's wrong with the parish with our municipal workings, as I understand what you said? Actually, I find the municipality pulls together very well. I find people very willing. Obviously, everybody bar the experts is a volunteer, and the experts, the honorarium is so meagre that they're almost volunteers. And it's the great spirit that keeps wanting to serve the parish that keeps them working together. If anything, I think the difficulty we have in the administration, especially at this time of year, and now we have a spring election as well, we've got a lot of strain on our office staff trying to give the backup to the various arms of the administration that they need, that is needed. The rates year is just drawing to its the end of the assessment period is just coming up. The parish staff who would normally be assisting with that have been pulled sideways into the election mode. I think we probably need to look at maybe some kind of restructuring, rejigging of the timetable. It's the support that we're giving that I think we need to look at from an administrator's point of view. That's how I'm looking at that question.
Thank you. Next question, please. Yes.
My name is Shirley de Grishy, parishioner, and I'd like to ask the candidates what are their views on euthanasia.
Juliet to start, John.
Oh, sorry.
Obviously, this is a subject that's been raised very much recently because of news that are happening in Guernsey, and I have to say that I've been asked some questions about it through the campaign group, and it's something that I haven't come to terms with yet because it's a much bigger issue. And euthanasia is, well, I think what they're actually calling it is assisted dying, and I think that is somebody who's at the end of their life being assisted. An easy, peaceful death. It's a really big situation. It's a really big topic. I'm concerned about the ethical dilemma that might place medical practitioners in. And to be honest with you, I don't know enough about it to be able to answer tonight on that. It's something that is on the back burner at home when the hustings is over to answer these questions that I've been asked. I would have said always in the past, very strictly, that I wasn't in favour. But, you know, that's, I think, the pride of youth when you haven't got, you know, when you're young and you're fit. Having had 3 of my closest family members pass away in the last couple of years and having been with them right through the process, there are times when I can tell you that I would have wished to have been able to make things easier. But it's not a question that I can glibly answer, I'm afraid, because I'm also a member of, you know, the church, and I've got things to think about there. Certainly, it's a discussion that I'm absolutely and totally willing to have, and I think it's something that we must have. We must look what Guernsey comes up with, and to see, you know, the arguments that are put forward there, and we must look at it ourselves in the very near future.
Firstly, it should not be myself making the decision on whether somebody wishes to take their life in that way. If you're that seriously ill, I think you have to rely on the medical practitioners in order to say there's absolutely no hope. And if that person's wishes that they've been able to make them before that time comes is that they want to end their life, I think that should be their choice. We shouldn't interfere into people's life choice, into that situation.
I hope you weren't looking at me when you got to the next question. Gentleman in the front.
Good evening. If you get elected, which...
Can you give your name first?
Robert Godfrey, sorry. If you were elected, which committee of the States would you like to sit on and why?
It's John to start.
Well, previously I was on the State's Employment Board, and that's got a lot of interest because I've always employed people right throughout my working life. It's something I could relate to in all the aspects of the Employment Board. It's something I know, and it's something I could continue with. And I know it wouldn't take a vast amount of time out of being constable.
Well, obviously, I won't know what opportunities are available until we see who's Chief Minister and how they structure it. I've been on planning for a long time now, about 9 years, and I've chaired it for 3.5 years. Part of that gives me a sort of case history that is, you know, very useful to draw on, but it's probably time that somebody else took over that. Although I'd be willing to be one of what they call one of the floating members to help out when they were short-staffed. But actually, like John, I've served on the State's Employment Board for the last 3.5 years. And that had some very interesting challenges. Workforce modernisation was the driving factor for most of that time. As you know, probably that has been withdrawn. But I've been very, very conscious of deficiencies in our pay, in our parity, male and female, in some areas. I've been concerned about certain... we were trying to make equal pay for equal jobs. There was a lot of evaluation work going on. And it strikes me that there are a lot of discrepancies in our pay scales that must be sorted out, because it's simply not fair on our workforce. And I'm on record as saying many times in the recent year or 2 years that we must invest in our workforce, because they are our front end, and they facilitate every decision the states make. So probably States Employment Board again.
Next question, Monica in the back there.
Good evening. My name is Monica Moore. I'd like to ask the candidates the following question. As constable, you will have total responsibility for over $500,000 budget. I'm inquiring as to what experience and expertise that you have had to ensure that the ratepayers' money is spent in a prudent and wise manner. I realise that you have advisors, but remember, the buck stops with you.
Yep. Thank you, Monica. I can tell you I'm aware every time I pick up the chequebook that the buck stops with me. Believe me, it's one of my driving concerns. Well, I've already got, obviously, in a number of years' experience as constable, so I've shown how I do manage the financial accounts of the parish. My background previously was in finance and legal administration. Whilst working in trust administration, I worked at a senior level. I managed many companies with budgets 50, 60, 100 times more than the budget of St Mary's, and was responsible for them. And so really I'm not daunted by the size of this budget at all. The size of our budget is only a problem in a different way, actually. It's when we are faced as a parish with the same fixed costs as every other parish, but our rate base and therefore our budget is so much smaller that prudence is really the prime virtue in Parish of St Mary. We simply don't have the excess of monies in our accounts that some other parishes do. So we're not able to build our reserves as quickly, and we're not able to finance bigger projects as quickly. So it all takes really careful, detailed management.
Having been self-employed for over 40 years, I've had to always budget very, very carefully. So it's not something that I feel strange with. At the end of the day, there might be a couple more noughts on the end. But if you look after the pennies, the pounds look after themselves. And we've got great advisors round to assist us in that.
Right, next question, please. Gentleman in the chair.
Hello, Lee Madden, resident of St Mary. Simple question, living wage, for or against, and why?
This is John to start.
Living wage is a difficult thing. I mean, should there be a minimum wage? Should there be a living wage? Because wherever it is, the social security handout is very close to it. If we up the living wage instead of the minimum wage, we won't be such a draw on social security. The trouble with making the wage too great is that the farming industry will suffer, the hotel industry will suffer, and possibly a lot of small industries won't be able to exist. But we need to look at that very, very carefully and get that right. I don't believe you should have a minimum wage and a living wage. It should be one or the other.
Okay, living wage, you asked a very quick question. Yes, I'm for it. The reason for that is because it will eventually, if it's structured correctly, take people out of poverty and will decrease reliance on benefits. Where there are industries that can't afford the living wage, obviously private industries will be, if they're non-viable, they're non-viable. But our key industries like agriculture and tourism, we've got to find different ways to support those industries to enable them to flourish enough to pay their staff an attractive and of course the living wage. Because we also need to think about encouraging our youngsters into the industries where we're having to recruit from overseas for now. And you know, if as we've had this time, there ever becomes a hiccup in the supply of overseas labour wanting to come into our service industries, then they suffer in a different way. So yes, I am for the living wage.
Thank you. Number 10, who's next? Yes? Tony, behind you, the gentleman in the blue shirt.
Yeah, hi, my name's Stephen Arthur. I was just wondering if each candidate could say one positive aspect about the other candidate.
Sorry, would you repeat the question?
Each candidate could say something positive about the other candidate.
Me to go first?
Yes.
Yes. That's really easy for me. John is an excellent shot. When I first started shooting many, many years ago. I don't know what. He was a very good mentor, and very skilled at what he did, and I was very pleased about that.
I'm also very delighted with the present constable because she keeps renewing my firearm certificate.
Good to keep it fairly light-hearted. Yes, next.
Hi, I'm Peter Munns, I'm a parish resident. John, in your speech you made mention of connecting all the properties to main drains and giving them running water. I'm just wondering how many properties in St Mary's are deficient in that respect, and how much it's going to cost to connect them, and who's going to pay. And I'm sure Juliet's got that information at her fingertips as well.
During my time as deputy, I identified about 110 houses on the north side of the parish which relied on their own soakaways and their own boreholes for fresh water. A lot of those were polluted, so those people were relying on bottled water. Our infrastructure minister, just gone, was then Treasury Assistant, and I went to him and asked him how much was getting put aside in order to rectify the situation, not just for St Mary, but for St John as well, and many parts of the island. And his answer to that question was nothing. You choose to live there, that's your choice, which I thought was absolutely outrageous. But should I be elected again, I will pursue that actual problem.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint even one of the electorate, but I don't have those figures at my disposal. In generic terms, I know from questions that I've asked of the States previously that there are some homes in the parish which have a very, very low probability of being connected. It's because they're outlying and because of the cost of digging up the roads, etc., to deliver services. St Peter's Valley has just been resurfaced all the way up to almost to the Elms. I don't see any drainage going in down there for the properties that are along in my section of the road, for example. So obviously the funding isn't there. We know that there has been talk of a levy for disposal of the liquid waste strategy. Let's call it that way. That hasn't advanced. We've had negotiations with the parishes. We've had lots of detailed initial consultation, but nothing has happened with that. And it's something that the levy would probably be able to finance more in the way of provision of other infrastructure services. But then again, the public balk at the idea of another levy and another charge. So I think the Minister of Infrastructure in the next Assembly is going to have a very difficult balancing act if he tries to carry forward the policies that have been started by the current Minister. That's not to say they're not worthy, but I just think that it's a situation that nobody actually really wants to knuckle down and pay for this. It's certainly not available. The money that's needed is not available in the budget at the moment, and it has to be found from elsewhere.
Please don't force me onto the main. Next question, please. Lady in there.
Thank you. I'm Joan de Grishy. What are the candidates' views on immigration? And how would they feel about having work permits?
Julia.
Right, we do need immigration in some shape or form. There is no possibility of simply turning off the gateway. What we need to have is a control. The migration policy, which we've been asking for the last 3.5 years, has been lodged. It's due for debate in September. That includes work permits for a limited time duration. It includes things like background checks. The elements of the policy that I've read, because obviously it's been lodged, I've been reviewing it in case I am lucky enough to be re-elected, and we'll be debating it quite soon, I think I'm entirely supportive of.
In 2013, I was on the scrutiny panel for migration and immigration. We put together a 50-point plan to be adopted by our states in order to rectify some of the things that weren't happening. It got cherry-picked. It never got implemented, and we're 5 years later and we're now looking at it again. Technology has moved on. You don't need photographs on a card anymore. That can all be done totally oblivious to the card holder. And cards can be used for more than one thing. They can be used for your social security, for your health, and for personal identification. We need to get something like this into place in order to safeguard our population and to make it easier for people that come in so that all their information is on that one card. It's happening, but it's very, very slow.
Next, please. And all what? The lady at my left.
Hello, I'm Kelly. If you could run for a minister position, which one would you go for and why?
I would not go for a minister position. I've seen problems with that in the past. It happened to the Constable of St Bellard, who took a large ministry on and ignored his parish. There's enough work to do in the States to be on a scrutiny panel or to be on various other panels and look after your parish and represent people like yourselves.
I think the question was theoretical, wasn't it? If I could go for a minister. I am categorically not looking to go for a minister's position, but if I were in a different situation and decided to, I would be going for Minister for External Relations. I've travelled widely for the States already. I'm president of the Assemblée Parlementaire de la Francophonie Jersey section, and I've got great experience in moving across Europe and holding talks with other member countries. And that I could put my experience forward that way. I would state again, I'm not looking to do that.
Right. So now number 14. Anybody else want to ask a question? Now's your chance.
Can I ask something?
Well, if nobody else has got a question, yes, Glyn. Oh, hang on, there's a gentleman. No, it's right. You ask your question, and Glyn will come back afterwards.
James Boyadan. Could I ask the candidate's position on bringing large-scale commercial businesses to our rural parish, i.e., will they stand up to maintain the peace and quiet of our parish? Thank you.
If large-scale business means large-scale development, which I think probably goes hand in hand, then I've got a record as on the planning committee of maintaining the sanctity of our green spaces and looking very, very strongly at all the qualifying criteria if I'm ever tempted to move away from our policy guidelines. businesses need somewhere to go. Small businesses are having a great difficulty finding premises that are affordable. But we're not talking in most of them about noisy or polluting businesses. I've had experience from a parishioner actually looking for somewhere he could keep his fishing gear. Just a little storage shed, and he couldn't find one anywhere that was affordable. So there are things that we can house in St Mary quite unobtrusively, perhaps in some of the redundant farm buildings that we've got, tucked away. No, I think we have to be very careful that we have got some purpose-built technical parks in the island. I don't think it's feasible, as was said at the senatorial hustings recently, that each parish provides land for another one. Certainly, if I had any land at the parish's disposal, I'd probably think more carefully about housing our youngsters than about that. But certainly, no, I've got a track record in keeping our green fields green wherever possible.
Mr. Bode, I'm not quite sure what you're actually meaning by large-scale businesses. Large-scale businesses could be totally disruptive, or they could be totally unseen. So obviously, everyone would have to be taken on his own merit, and you would judge it accordingly. I don't know if you've got a specific business in mind. Do you?
Yes. So the proposed move of the Chair's PCA to buy Crabbe for commercial kennels.
We've discussed that previously in this assembly room, and as far as I know, they had put in plans that would be totally soundproof to that area, but it's been withdrawn as far as I know. So I don't even know if that business is still on the cards for coming into the parish.
Just using that as an example of a large sort of move into the parish.
Well, I don't think it would matter the size of the business so long as it's not disruptive and noisy. And if parishioners around it are quite happy with it, then why not?
Right. Your supplementary, Glenn.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the candidates, what do you think you can bring to the parish over the next term of office that the other candidate cannot, and why?
You can start.
I'd like to see more integration with the electorate and the administration side of the parish, because without you integrating and telling us exactly what you want, it's very difficult for the politician to get your view across in the States. There's lots of ways that we could work better together, but the art of that is communication, and that's something that's essential to all of us. Contact.
Well, actually, if I would do something quite radical now, I'll answer what John thinks is necessary, because we have the contact. I'm communicating with parishioners on a daily basis across a wide range of media. I don't necessarily need to wait for them to come to me. I can go to them through the parish Facebook, etc. So communication is something that we already have it well in train. What I can bring to the role as constable is something that I've brought, obviously, all the time that I've been here, through the training I had in my previous career. I'm well used to working with all statutory regulatory authorities. I'm used to keeping the parish in good standing right across all areas. And I've done that in the past. We had some issues in the last couple of years with good standing in the ecclesiastical court. But my time spent working in the legal profession meant that I could easily help with that. And so, right across the parish, what I bring is experience.
Is there anybody else burning to ask a question? How was your time? Sorry, there's a lady there, Tony.
Emma Bennett. So you're touching just on the question before. Currently, the parish has quite very different channels of communication. Especially as a young parishioner, I find social media quite informative, quite helpful. Juliet, should you be re-elected, will this be maintained? And John, if you were elected, what channel will you be taking to communicate to young parishioners and other parishioners alike?
Okay. Well, yes, absolutely. We've tried to engage more and more through different media in the last few years. I've had a Twitter account for the parish since before the last election, but we've built on that. We've got our community events page where anybody in the community can feed information through to us. We will publicise what's going on. We've had members in this very assembly room that I can see tonight who've been doing private projects at home, have contacted us, we've put it on the community page. We're getting people involved. I have over 750 followers on my Twitter account. So I've got a good percentage of the parish looking at what I'm doing. I recently went to a Chamber Connect meeting for young entrepreneurs, business people. I think it's 18 to 34 is roughly the range. And they analysed, as they came in, they had a quick poll. And at the end of that evening, I learned that actually the things that I thought were good at engaging people in that age group, a good website, for example, they're not even looking at them anymore. It's all being done by social media. And if we don't embrace that, then we lose the opportunity of connecting with a whole section of our community. So yes, absolutely. And if anybody's got any ideas for extra things we could do, we're always willing to be receptive to those. Thank you.
Well, as Juliet mentioned, the parish already has a system in place for dealing with most of the things that you require. Other things that you might require, you might not want to have broadcast. So in that case, you would either telephone me or email me, because a lot of people still want to have a one-to-one talk. And in that case, we don't need something like Twitter to arrange that kind of thing. It can be quite simply done on the telephone, at a meeting, or on an email. But the system for general information is already there.
Anybody else? Hang on, there's a gentleman there.
Good evening, Les Stanton. If the parish were to make available land for first-time buyers, where do you envisage that land to be in the parish?
I think that if it isn't your land, that is a provocative question, which I would be surprised if either candidate wants to name somebody else's land.
John first.
If you want to say anything, please do.
I can't personally identify any land that would be coming available for first-time buyers in St Mary. To me, the only first-time buyers' land that makes it really affordable to first-time buyers has to be states land, which they keep the equity of it in order to truly make first-time buyers' homes affordable. If somebody in the parish wishes to donate their land, I think that would be a marvellous thing. But we'd have to consult with the parishioners around them to see how they actually felt about that as well. So thank you if that's an offer.
Well, I'm certainly not going to name any land, but certainly there are some offers, some areas of land that I have had initial discussions with the owners of. But the way forward is not to simply say, yes, we've had an offer of a piece of land, let's build houses there. We need to have a viable village plan, because the land that you're offered may not be the best land available. We have to be sure that we site it correctly. It has to be near the infrastructure. It has to be, it should be, not in the middle of a newly opened field site, whatever. So as I said, one of the first things I want to do is get a committee together to start making our village plan to update it. And then into that, we will feed the mix of anybody who would like to see who has a piece of land they'd like to see potentially rezoned. And that will be part of the debate, because rezoning of green zone land is, assuming it's green zone, I don't know, but that's a really, really big step. We've seen at St Peter's they have a huge need. I mean, the emails that I've had are horrendous, the people who are desperate for somewhere to live and who really had their heart set on that. And, I think that a solution will be found there. But the best thing we could do, it's like when we built the roadworks, we were ready to go when the money was available. So we need to be ready to go when the island plan is debated so that we know what we want. It's our parish. We have to decide the best way forward for it.
David Johnson.
What are the candidates' views about rationalising speed limits in the parish, and in particular liaising with neighbouring constables with a view to removing unnecessary ironwork, mongery, shall I say, on the same road?
Well, I've had an interesting experience of that because I've had lots of inquiries from the residents of Grevdelec Bay area to make a short stretch, 20-mile-an-hour stretch. And, on the face of it, that looks completely reasonable because there's a car park on one side, a seaside on the other. In the summer, there's lots of youngsters walking backwards and forwards through there. It seems a reasonable request. And as I said before, I fed that into DFI. But when I approached St Wands to say, would they like to come on board with us and have sort of the bend up towards the Prince of Wales included, they weren't interested. And it's not something we can enforce on another parish. Obviously, the Highway Authority in that case is DFI anyway, but it is difficult. It's a shame we have so many speed limits, I personally think, and our green lane system is fantastic. It would be much better, probably in theory, if we had just 20s and 40s. But actually, the experience is that people in the green lanes probably go about 20, and it's still a manageable speed. If we increased it to 20, they'd probably go faster, and we can't police every square mile of every road all the time. So unless you want more traffic humps, which I don't, the answer has, I think, got to be to maintain the speed limits as they are.
The Grevdelec situation is very interesting, actually, because when I was canvassing in 2014, that was one of the things which those residents really wanted, was a lower speed limit in that area. And it was put forward, and it was firmly rejected. It's come to light now, and there's obviously been a change of heart. We do need speed limits, and very often if you drive around St Mary's, you will find a 40-mile-an-hour road where you can't get two cars down. And if you notice, there probably won't be a white line in the middle of it. And everywhere where you don't see a white line down the middle is the type of road that should be reduced in speed. And maybe if we did that kind of thing, you wouldn't need so many signposts, changes of speed regulation everywhere. You just drive to suit how the road is. We've got 2 lanes of road which are 20s and 1 lane of road which is a 40. And it just doesn't make sense. I think the whole thing in the parish and across Ireland needs a total revision.
Next. Nobody say a bit more? Right. In that case, I think we should give the candidates a couple of minutes to say a few words if they wish to wind up, and we can all go home in a good hour. Okay? So do you want to go, John?
Thank you all in taking what is a very keen interest in the only contested election in the island for constable. Every candidate across this island has produced a manifest that they think you will approve of. Even if you do approve, and they get your vote. Unless their fellow politicians collectively agree, the proposals will not go anywhere. A manifesto is of no use unless it is what you want. If you want something different, then communicate. It's the only way to get changes. To get the changes that will achieve the very best for our island and our parish. If you want change in the way that you are represented at parish level through to the states, then please vote for me and we can do this together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, although, as I've said, I'm not really at ease talking about myself, I have really enjoyed this campaign so far. It has been absolutely lovely to meet so many parishioners and to discuss the matters that concern you. And as usual, I have to say the warmth of the St Mary welcome on the doorstep has been really invigorating. I thank everyone who's engaged with me during the campaign, and especially those who have expressed support for the initiatives I've put forward. These proposals in my leaflet are based on what you have already asked for, and I can assure you they are deliverable. To those who have offered me suggestions as to further possible improvements, I thank you for your ideas, and I will follow up on them as I've indicated when we spoke. It has been a real privilege to be your constable. I've been in this parish, working as parish secretary, as deputy, and now as constable for more than 18 years. But I don't take anything for granted concerning this election. I have steered the parish calmly and steadily, and the feedback that I have had on the doorstep is that you are broadly content with the way the parish is run. As parishioners, you've voiced your concerns and your aspirations to me. I believe that I am the candidate with the drive, experience and longevity to take these issues forward and to make the voice of St Mary heard in the coming years. This parish matters to me. It's at the heart of everything I do. I strive to maintain its character, its uniqueness and its reputation. My challenger says it's time for change. That's maybe just a cliche. What is it that needs changing? What changes does he propose? What do these changes actually mean for you and for St Mary? What do they cost? I've not seen these questions addressed anywhere. So instead, I say that now is the time to consolidate everything we have worked for over the past few years, to decide the direction that we want our parish to take, and to build on our achievements. I am the candidate who can make that happen. Once again, I ask for your support on May 16th. Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Good night.
Well, thank you all for coming. Have a good Liberation Day tomorrow, and we'll be back here at 8 o'clock on Thursday evening for the next one. Okay, thank you very much indeed.